Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us as part of the Ferguson Partners MasterMinds interview schedule, where we've been working with industry leaders who've made a significant mark on the sector throughout their careers. And today we're pleased to have a chance to talk to you about the impact that you've made and some of the actions that you've taken in order to get to where you are today. Throughout that period, you've worked with a variety of different geographic ownership sources across the UK, the US, and also Australian businesses. And I'm just wondering what the influence has been in terms of your corporate understanding and attitude to your career and leading those businesses with that range of ownership structures.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you for that introduction. And before we get going, I should say pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. And yeah, it has been quite a long time in the real estate industry, working for a number of different companies and doing a number of different jobs. Always, hopefully, as I've moved on from one role to the next, trying to sort of challenge myself and sort of move myself forward and look at maybe the sort of gaps or the areas that I haven't done, and trying to sort of address those in my career, but also very transparently, also working with what's going on at home as well. So I've got two kids, so sort of working around that. I've got a husband that also has a career, so this sort of idea of a dual career family, so working around that and everything, so making sure that he has the opportunity to push his career forward whilst I have the opportunity to push my career forward, and hopefully doing my job as a parent as well. So yeah, there's a sort of a lot in there. For me, working for companies from different geographies, principally the US and now Asia, it's what you see is obviously different communication styles, and different ways of different cultural nuances that lead to sort of different ways of getting things done. But actually, what I have found that served me best is, in both cases, is just trying to put myself in their perspective. And if you put yourself in their shoes, try to understand what it is that they're asking you for, irrelevant of communication styles or the ways of getting there. Once you've understood their perspective, then normally it's something that you can hopefully address and help them solve, whilst balancing that with your own business objectives and whatever it is that you need to deliver for your business unit. The Americans are really black and white. You get a straightforward yes and you get a straightforward no, and they occasionally like to have a debated a heated debate to get there. The Asians are much more respectful. There's less of the heat in things, but it's potentially a bit more difficult to get a straightforward yes or no. So it sort of weighs up slightly different way of doing things, which is why you need to understand their perspective.
A lot of the conversations that we have for people who are at the head of the industry have said that at some point through their careers they've been stretched. There have been, as I say, dynamic roles that they've been pushed into. And some have commented that they've felt a sort of, for want of a better expression, an imposter syndrome while they find their feet. Has that ever been the case for you? And if so, what measures did you take to overcome that and make yourself feel more embedded and comfortable in that task?
Yeah, undoubtedly. There have been points in my career, I think particularly when you've taken on sort of new roles, and as you say, sort of really stretched yourselves into those new roles, that as you've sort of found your feet and sort of gained confidence in that role, that you do feel slightly like as if you are the imposter, having it at times to sort of put your game face on as you go into situations to sort of ride it through. I think particularly I took on leading the real estate business for GE Capital
Mm.
in 2008, just before Lehman's went down. It was my first big management job. And, clearly it was a very sort of difficult time for the industry, in fact, for the economy generally.
Mm.
And I think what I found that sort of saw me through that period, it was all about sort of collaboration with colleagues, and making sure that, you pulled your team together and leveraged their sort of skills and that diversity of thought across your team. And really important that in putting your team together, you make sure that you have those different skills and that diversity of thought. But that collaboration sort of gets you through those periods and helps solve those difficult problems, but also sort of gets you through those phases in your career where you're maybe building confidence in that new role that you're in.
And from that, clearly, you were able to evolve in that under the GE business overall, and become, leading their lending solutions across Europe, combining your, geographic coverage that you'd done as a principal investor, covering it for the debt stack across the UK and European market.
Well, yeah, actually, so the real estate business did equity and debt, and then GE, as you may remember, sort of under the Jack Welch era, and then sort of to a certain extent under the Jeff Immelt era, was very keen on developing people's sort of management skills. So you sort of stepped away from your real estate or whatever your domain expertise was, in my case, real estate, and really built that management muscle. So when I got the opportunity to go and run GE's bank for them in the UK, which was a corporate lending bank across Europe.
Yeah.
Everything but real estate, in fact. It was a really interesting opportunity for me. So I sort of went to do something slightly different, spent 5 years outside of the real estate industry, getting in a business that was regulated. So I having sort of frequent visits from the regulators. It was a extraordinary experience, and one that I think really helped me grow. And now, in fact, has sort of supported my step into a non-exec role, because in that role as CEO of the bank, obviously I was part of a board and seeing how that sort of operated. So really got to understand governance as well as regulation. And then as I moved into my non-exec role at Unite, hopefully that's given me some skills that I've been able to sort of bring to the Unite group as well. As I look at the, my 3 business leadership roles at GE, the real estate business, the bank, and then now at Frasers, they all have sort of slightly different sort of traits to them. So the real estate business was about growth, and then it was about getting through the GFC and sort of setting the business up to return to investment subsequently.
Yeah.
The bank was about investment, go fix it and then grow.
Right.
And obviously, or not obviously, but the Frasers has been about establish the business and then grow. And so they've all had sort of slightly different, different focuses, and that's been really helpful. Culture's the most important thing. So the old culture eats strategy for breakfast. I'm a big believer in that. Without the right people and without the right culture, no matter how good your strategy is, you're not going to win. So you need to have a good strategy, but you need to have the right people and you need to have the right culture in those people.
Right.
And for me, that's been one of the really fun things about Frasers. And you just don't get those opportunities very often to come into a business within the sort of the umbrella of the group, which is listed in Singapore and has very significant businesses in Singapore, Australia, and Thailand, particularly. Come into that umbrella to what was a sort of startup business in the UK and grow it quite quickly. And in recruiting people, once I put my management team in place, then really it's about trusting them and letting them do, if you've chosen the right management team and you've got that diversity in your team, then it's about letting them get on and do, what they do, and then bringing the rest of the team, the people into the business. And if that management team have your culture and values, then it'll cascade its way down through the organisation.
At what point, having considered your career to that point where you were approached, did you realise that there was an entrepreneurial itch that needed scratching?
When I was going through the process of working out what I wanted to do next, the thought of working for another large corporate just didn't attract me anymore. I thought I'd actually done that for most of my career, and the idea of doing something a bit more entrepreneurial, really, really attracted me. And I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed sort of going back to basics. And basics were, when I arrived, it was literally phoning people up myself and saying, do you want to come and work for me?
Yeah.
And it was great. It has been really good fun. Now in that evolution, we're probably almost on our sort of third phase, the initial growth phase and that sort of consolidation of the people that you've managed to recruit. And we're now in that phase of sort of looking at the skill gaps and sort of tweaking and embedding that team, making sure that you've got all of the right skills in the organisation. And unfortunately, not so slightly unfortunately, obviously as you get bigger, then you have to in some ways become more corporate, because you just have more people, and then you need to think about how you communicate with them. You need to have more sort of systems and processes and policies in place to make sure people are doing things as you need them to be done. So what we are trying very hard to do is, while we build all of that, is just making sure that we don't lose some of that agility and flexibility that you get from a smaller organisation as well. And frankly, that ability to get in a room and collaborate as a team and make the right decisions when we're sort of facing issues and challenges.
Everybody is faced with the more recent evolution of or accelerated evolution of ESG. When you're leading the business and in terms of the overall business's investment decisions, to what extent are you leading on that topic from the front versus having overall accountability, but actually pushing it down into the business? I'm just curious, because nobody, I think, has the perfect answer yet.
For us, the ESG journey has been sort of really steep, because we've got to where we've got to in effectively in 4 years. So we have just secured the GRES 4-star for the second year in a row, and we're also ranked first in our peer group, which we're really pleased with.
Rightly proud of, yeah.
Yeah, we are. It's been a great. It's been a great journey. What's important now, what we're doing now, is just keeping pushing ourselves. So we've just gone through a process of reviewing all of our ESG targets and our roadmap, and challenging ourselves to bring in the timetables on some of our pathways, so that we're sort of bringing stuff in a bit more. And of course, once things are a bit closer in time, it really makes you think about how you're going to get from where you are now to where you need to be in 2030. As for instance, and sort of really stepping out some very sort of practical steps to what it is you have to do to achieve that. We just made our submission for science-based targets, so that's another sort of step on that process as well. We were fortunate enough within the umbrella of the Frasers Group to be able to leverage some of the work that the other platforms, particularly the Australian platform, had done. They've been on that journey for longer than us,
right?
And we sort of leveraged some of their experience and skills to sort of help kickstart our journey. But then obviously we needed to take responsibility for that here, and not everybody may think this, but the UK government, by pushing the sort of regulatory landscape around this, is actually pushing the industry to sort of move forward as well. So clearly what we want to try and challenge ourselves to do is be ahead of government regulation and sort of looking more forward than government regulation. So that is what we are trying to do.
you can't come to this without me asking the question: what are your economic and sort of crystal ball forecasts for next year? Bearing in mind this is a happy afternoon's conversation.
That's the most like hideous question you could possibly ask me. I mean, you just think about the last few years. I mean, it's an extraordinary sort of period of time, and what it does make you do is sort of reflect on the ups and downs of the last 20 years or so, and just sort of looking back at history, trying to work out from history where we are now and where we might be sort of going forward. I'm not sure that's particularly helped, but it is helpful to look back and remember the sort of cycles and where we've been. I think as a business, there's not a lot I can do to sort of impact on yields, but there's a lot I can do to impact on income. So as a business, what we're doing is making sure that we focus on income. So what that means is, reducing our vacancy rate wherever we possibly can, and grabbing rental growth wherever we can possibly get it, while obviously delivering on all of the other areas that we already want to deliver on, for instance, ESG. So that's really our focus. I think in these times you have to be, you do have to think about the things that you can control and the things that you just can't control. And interest rates are and the ongoing impact on valuation, I can't necessarily control, but what I can control is what's happening on the income side. And obviously that could be an offset to outward movement in yields.
You've seen an awful lot of change. We all have. But what advice would you give to the up and coming leaders of tomorrow to make sure that they are as well equipped as they can be, having reflected on some of the things that you've learned along the way and the pace of change?
I think what I try and do, I'm a silver lining person, right? So I'm always going to be looking for the silver lining. But what that translates to is actually trying to look for sort of opportunities in adversity. So, where we are going through sort of market cycles and changes and everything, what opportunities actually does that give you as a business to go and, do something different or better or to actually drive value or growth or returns, whatever it is that you're looking to drive at that time. So opportunities in adversity. And I think the other thing, leaders of the future, data is so important. It's so hugely important. We are in the process of this fascinating data journey as a business. I'm really sort of grappling with our data and all forms of data. So, our energy data, customer data, occupancy data,
customer
safety, all sorts of information, and just having that sort of quantum of data and how you use it and what it drives in terms of decision making or recognizing trends and being able to take advantage of trends. There's something I don't know exactly where all of that's going to go, but I'm really enjoying that journey and sort of pulling all of that together and seeing how we can use it and use it better. So I think for the next generation of leaders, that ability to harness data and use data going forward is going to be really important.
Ilaria, thank you so much for your time on this.